On the Battletech Tactica side, I wanted to follow up on two comments. We've been looking at some various mechs. We've been looking at some Battletech Fundamentals 101. We've been exploring this idea of combined arms. That Battletech as a war game can be very, very simple. Could be just like some mechs versus mechs, or quite complex with ground units, conventional units, air units, artillery. And we were talking about bunkers a couple of weeks back on there. This spawned some ideas in terms of battle value, or if you were setting up a battlefield, investing in spending battle value or setting up static defenses. Are there options for this, and how would it play out? You know, essentially, if it was a campaign going back and forth, you've got your side, I've got my side, maybe we've got a middle area, no man's land, and I've fortified parts of it, and now it's being attacked, or I'm launching a scouting party or a foray into that no man's land. What are some of the things we could look at? I've played with Minefields before. Certainly there are rules for anti-vehicle and anti-mech mines, but the challenge here is, for the most part, they're not always hidden, and unlike artillery, the damage you take, you kind of immediately know where they are, especially if it's from the perspective of a hex map on there. You can kind of guess because they also work on detonation of opposing mechs. So due to the small limitations of a hex map, and that's not a criticism even if you string together two hex maps, I find for the battle value, that type of setup really doesn't work as well as you'd think. I mean, it's kind of cool to play with. Certainly try it out once or twice, but it's not a main tactic. There's also some ideas for blockades and tank traps. Again, they can kind of be bypassed, especially if you're in combined arms where you've got mechs, you've got air support. There are ways around it. So what I've noticed with Battletech is it's a very fluid game. The units have a lot of flexibility. They generally move very, very fast. The ranges can be complex and long if you have long-range weaponry on there. Static stuff is kind of bypassed. Now, one of the optional rules that is beast mode on. Hidden units, rules for ambushes. Depending on the tech level you're playing, if you're playing clan invasion, there's certain mechs that will be able to detect that, be able to deal with it, or when an ambush is launched, given the speed of clan mechs and other things, that ambush you'll get one turn on, but the kill zone really becomes kind of irrelevant because you'll be able to run away or bring a lot of firepower on there. If you're talking Succession era early on, you know, Fall of Star League a little bit after that, leading up to the first Succession era, the first Succession Wars, that's where ambushes get deadly, because we have these high-tech mechs, and you have some rules for spotting, but you got to be really, really close. And if you're dealing with stuff that's powered down and hidden, especially if they're conventional vehicles, you know, ICE, internal combustion engines, you can set up some pretty nasty ambushes for respectable battle value. I mean, you can take some Demolisher tanks. You can take some short-range missile carriers, park them, hide them. You can take some infantry, hide them on there. And it becomes quite a challenge to find them and dig them out. And when they do ambush you, unless it's a light mech, it's going to be hard to disengage, especially if I'm ambushing you with 2 or 3 units on there. And this would be a traditional hex map, you know, a couple of trees, a couple of areas there, some elevations. If we go to a city, if we move into city fights, city tech, and I've got some heavy tanks like the Antaros, or I've got the Behemoth on there, I've got Shrek PPC carriers, I've got short-range missile boats hiding out, then you want to talk about paranoid as a mech commander. The ambush rules in a city are insane. This is where we start to see mechanized infantry really, really shine, because the battle value buy-in is pretty low. Speed is okay, but as a screening force to send them out to detect, that's the way to go. And if I was going to play with alternative rules for either side, the ambush rules are a lot of fun. The ambush rules are really, really interesting with how they work, and that's some optional rules that I would look to play with and put in. That's not to say you can't play with fortifications, minefields, tank traps, barricades, but they just don't have the expected bite. Maybe if you're thinking more of a traditional historical type war game, they're there, but they don't quite work in the same way.